This is the Ascension Football Show. I'm Joel Villafana. Welcome. The Normalization Committee continues to be under fire here in TNT. Members of the TTFA and all stakeholders involved continue to be concerned and express concern over the leadership that currently exists in Trinidad and Tobago's football. We continue to examine the operations of the Normalization Committee. Here with us today is none other than the East Zone President and former TTFA board member, Kyron Edwards. This is the Ascension Football Show. Here's what's coming up.
You must have discussions about where the debt is, what we're doing with the debt, how we're treating with the debt.
I am Caleb Sturge and I am a defender and I represent Terminexla Hocketa Rangers.
We need to take those things into consideration. We're talking about the zonal level. Would it have promotion?
Mr. Robert Haddad is in the hot seat, and the seat is getting hotter and hotter by the day. We continue to examine the operation of the Normalization Committee and the role it's currently playing here on the Ascension Football Show. With us to continue delving deeper into it as we seek answers based on what seemingly is a lack of communication or proper communication by the Normalization Committee with its members, with the stakeholders here in football here in Trinidad and Tobago. We continue to examine that. And with us today, as I mentioned to the top, Kyron Edwards. He is a former TTFA board member and now serving as the president of the East Zone Football League. Thank you very much, sir, for being here.
Thank you very much, Joel, for having me here once again.
Mr. Edwards, so give folks a little background, first of all, in terms of your involvement with the TTFA, first of all, in terms of your involvement with the TTFA over the years.
My first involvement with the TTFA would have come in December 2019, when I was installed as the president of the Eastern Football Association and then nominated to be the board representative for the zone on the TTFA board. Going into the board, it was a new board, a new executive of the TTFA, because in November would have had the elections of the TTFA, and Mr. Wallace and company would have won the election over Mr. David John Williams, and he would have formed the new board. So I would have been one of the persons on that. I think there would have been about 15 persons or so on that board. And that would have been my first introduction in terms of the TTFA and dealing with things on that level, on the board level. Having to hit the ground running, so to speak, because at that time it was a new administration, grand ideas, a new way of dealing with things. I think Mr. Wallace's campaign was on transparency and doing things different to David John Williams and his tenure as president. So they wanted to transform the way football was run in Trinidad and Tobago. The first meeting was, I think, something like 13 or 14 hours long. First board meeting, a marathon board meeting. That was the first. So going into it knowing that normal meetings would have been 2 hours, 3 hours long, expecting that, kind of getting some guidance from board members before, and then going into a meeting and it's 13 hours long. It was a culture shock for me. Being on other boards before, it was a culture shock to me. But knowing that football was in the state it was in, knowing of the debt before coming into it, you expected that all hands on deck. You would have to put in a little more effort into what you're doing now if you're really serious about the job. So I think everybody accepted the role of being on the board and those long meetings and that kind of stuff. Fast forward a couple months, we were sent a letter by FIFA saying normalization.
So just before we fast forward, take me through that period of Mr. Wallace's administration and you serving as a board member. Before FIFA got involved, were you generally in a happy place with regards to what was happening under Mr. Wallace and the running of football at that point in time?
The dynamics on the board was strange. Normally you would have the chairman of a board taken lead in terms of discussions normally. So coming into the board, they're expecting that the president, being the chair of the board, would control discussions and lead discussions of where things should go and have a handle on it. And it was kind of unique at some meetings with Mr. Leclerc, and we know the dynamics of Mr. Leclerc having basically shared presidency reigns, or however you want to put it. And that was a shock for me. Not every decision made by the board I was pleased with. I raised concerns on several matters. It have some, well, for example, the whole technical committee and how they operate with the national coach and how that whole scenario operates. I was one that told Mr. Leclerc, as much as we are giving you the autonomy to deal with the footballing matters with the technical committee, if this fails within the window, and it would have been 2020 where you had the Gold Cup qualifiers coming up, and if this structure fails, it would be a condemnation on your tenure as the chairman of the technical committee. And I had no problems with telling him that, and he understood, and he said, well, I understand that, and we would cross that bridge when we reach it. And then seeing how things unfolded, we had issues with I remember the last board meeting we had issues with the AVIC deal, and the contract was now given to us to have a look at, and off the back we had some issues with what we saw in the contract, but that was the last board meeting before the normalization came in, so we never really got time to go through that, and it had other issues where persons voiced concerns with issues happening on the board or decisions being made, but as you know, being on a board, you have a collective responsibility, and decisions you might abstain from a vote, but unless you put this in writing, you're still connected with that collective responsibility. So I would have sent emails out on certain matters, making sure that although I didn't vote for a particular issue, I would voice my concerns to the president personally to let him know, hey, I don't agree with this point. We could go in a different direction, and as I always say, you live and die by your decisions.
Allow me to build up to where we are today, right? Because I think one of the biggest issues, you will agree with me, in local football at the national level has been the handling of the finances and the poor handling of the finances, to the point that we have reached close to what is being audited as a $100 million debt. When Mr. Wallace's administration took over in that little period, was that being seriously addressed at the board meetings? Did they have a plan, or were they conjuring up some sort of plan to say, hey, board members, this is how we are going to deal with it? Was that part of the discussions at all, Mr. Edwards?
The debt would have had some discussions. We had some discussions about the debt. If it was the priority of the board at that time, no.
No?
No, of Mr. Wallace regime coming into it and saying the priority is debt and how we're going to treat with the debt, no.
No.
That wasn't the priority.
Were you surprised by that?
I was surprised in terms of not having a clear plan in terms of what you're going to do with debt, because you're now coming off a election campaign. You must have discussions about where the debt is, what we're doing with the debt, how we're treating with the debt, because the discussion of the debt was there some months, years before. So I was shocked in terms of that. And then certain decisions being made kind of had thrown me back in terms of some hirings, of the price of hirings, because we had a heated discussion on the board about the price of the men's senior team coach and what we're giving him. We now move on from Dennis Lawrence, and we knew why we had to move on from Dennis Lawrence, and not he's a national hero, but as a coach he has one of the worst records as a national men's senior team coach. So you had to do what you have to do when it comes to that, and because the contract and it's poor contracts, and that is one of the main reasons, it's poor contracts, and because the contract was done so poorly for Dennis. You really had to pay him and move him on. But coming out of that, knowing the debt, you can't come and pay a guy the same amount or more. It's not reasonable. And we had discussions on the board at the board level, heated discussions in terms of where men's senior team coach should be paid, what was the range we should work with, if we should work with a range, and that kind of stuff. We know what happened with the contract when it's all said and done, but it had discussions on that. And the debt repayment plan, one topic came up about the company Lavender, I believe, coming and doing some project with the Arima Velodrome, and well, we know that fell flat. But no real plan was shared.
You wouldn't say on a scale of 1 to 10 that it was a priority of the Wallace administration.
On a scale 1 to 10, 10 being the highest.
10 being the highest.
About a 2.
That was where they would have put the debt, the issue of the of the debt.
When you watch through all board minutes,
they were looking to move forward with football.
They were looking to move forward with football. It was more based on football matters, on the field matters, not really about the debt and how we treat with the debt.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. At the junction now, when the normalization committee, all of a sudden we started hearing FIFA getting involved behind the scenes, and the appointment of a normalization committee coming into play, and some people described it in football as a coup, overthrowing what is a democratically elected body that was voted into power to run football. FIFA came in, did what they did, and appointed a normalization committee. Where did you stand with regards to that little period there? Was he bored on the whole, happy with what was happening at that point?
I believe the board was split. At that point, when FIFA came in with the normalization committee, the board was split. Coming out of the maybe 2 or 3 board meetings before, some of the board members had issues with some things they saw coming out from the board, seeing contracts, hearing about agreements. Board members, it was rumored, it was in the mill before about what was happening. FIFA would have knew a little more than us, because FIFA would have had their representative coming maybe about a month before they announced the normalization to have discussions and to go through the numbers, and so they would have seen exactly what was happening. There was a limited flow of information to the board members at that time as well. So most of the board members were kind of in favor of saying, all right, we need to press the reset button. Nothing is happening in terms of the debt, so they welcomed it. And well, as you know, some board members had issues with it, and maybe the board members with the most say, that stand to lose the most in terms of not being elected and elected officials, they had the bigger issue with it, and I understand why.
So more or less split.
More or less split.
You want to tell me personally? I said you were more or less a new board member as well. When you heard that, okay, as you mentioned quite rightly, a reset button almost being set, a normalization committee coming into to restructure and reorganize the running of football, were you in agreement with that reset button?
I accepted it.
Yeah,
I accepted it. One, it was it wasn't illegal with what FIFA did. I understand why. When you saw the letter coming from FIFA of the debt repayment and the statutes and whatnot, I understand. I understood fully what was happening, and it needed to be done. Yes, persons would argue it should have been done before David John Williams had an election call and that kind of stuff. It should have happened a year before. Coming into that tenure, in terms of the numbers of the added debt.
But how valid is that? Because that is a position by many. That why the timing of FIFA deciding.
FIFA has a responsibility to their MAs. And if they're seeing an MA going into debt and continue to go into debt, 3 months, 2 days, a day. If you come in and you sign a contract for $1 billion and you can't pay it, should I leave you there for a year?
And they have $1 billion win.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, yeah.
So they knew, they saw the numbers, they knew where they was going. There's not like FIFA decided yesterday started to administrate football worldwide. So they knew that we're going to go over the cliff. We need to stop at some point. Yes, it's 3 months, 4 months into a new tenure of an executive, but it had to be done. And we're looking at the numbers of $98 million now. A month later, we wanted to cross, we wanted to be 200 million, 150 million. So at some point, you have to and if it happens, then it happens. Then you have to do things because it have to be done, not that you want to do it.
Yeah. So just for the record, you were more or less
I was comfortable. I
comfortable in
accepted,
agreement with the
accepted,
normalization committee coming into play.
Yeah, I accepted it.
Since then, Mr. Edwards, you have been sort of very much involved in assessing and working with the normalization committee. You've had meetings with Mr. Haddad, I think, over the period of time that you mentioned to me about. What has been the relationship, your relationship with Mr. Haddad, and in terms of how the normalization committee would have come in? How long have they been there now? If we throw our minds back.
A year, over a year. But as Mr. Haddad said, about 6 months of him without any issues.
Right.
So yeah, over a year, but 6 months of calm.
Of calm. Too much calm?
I wouldn't say that. I think he needs a level of calm to get the job done. So he has that level of calm, I believe.
Talk to me about your relationship with Mr. Haddad and what has happened, as I said, over the last year or so with regards to the installation of this normalization committee.
Well, I have a relationship with Mr. Haddad based on my position as a association head. So, being the zone president, I would have to be in contact with Mr. Haddad. Being the director of the Ascension football tournament, I would have to be in interaction with Mr. Haddad. So I would have meetings and we'll have discussions. I think we have a cordial relationship. Right? If I call him, he would return a call or would answer. If he calls me, I would return a call and answer. And if we're in a meeting, if we mightn't like everything and not everything what would be said today he might like. But I believe there's a level of respect for me, and I think I have a level. I have a level of respect for Mr. Haddad, and I think with football that is what it should be. It should stay from the emotions. If I like that person and if I don't like that, because that is the problem with football. As a David John Williams man, so everything David do are good. As a Timke guy, so everything that Timke do are good. I'm a Jack Warner boy, a Cams boy, so everything they do is gold. No, Wallace. Wallace was one of my mentors growing up. One of my first board appointment years ago was with William Wallace. So, and he's somebody I looked up to. I still have discussions with him sometimes. So having your stance on football matters should not be if you're good with the person or not. I had no relationship with Mr. Haddad before, but I think we have a cordial one because of football, and I will remain respectful in the future, hopefully.
Let's just look at the last year. In terms of when you said, okay, you were more or less happy with an understanding of what was happening. I think let me not use the word happy. Happy seems like a word that was not too comfortable with. You understood. You understood the decision by FIFA to step in and press the reset button and appoint a committee.
Right.
It's been approximately a year, all right, give or take, calm and non-calm. It's been approximately a year. I want you to rate that year in its entirety, because they would have also been handed, Mr. Haddad, you would agree, would have been handed a difficult job, a hot seat, as I mentioned, at the top. Anybody going into that position to restructure and reorganize football in this country had a job on their hands. How would you rate what they have done thus far?
Sometime back, I was asked that question, and I think I rate it as I give him a rating of 5 at the last time. I think it dropped a little lower than 5. I think I give him a 3 now, just based on what the things that unfolded the last couple of weeks. Over the last couple of weeks, and the handling of it. So I'll give him a 3. I'll give him a 3.
At the outset of his appointment, I think one of the things I was hearing, he made it very clear that, unlike what you're saying with regards to the Wallace administration, the debt that the TTFA was facing was probably the most important matter on his agenda. That's correct?
I mean, yeah. It was the most important agenda on FIFA.
On FIFA.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
on FIFA as well. When they sent the letter, that was the first thing they cited, setting out a repayment plan, and then they follow with the statutes and whatnot, and then set up an election as we know. So the debt is paramount on in terms of what we should do and how we should operate when it comes to the TTFA at this point.
Were you one of the members? You would have been one of the stakeholders that would have signed the letter that was sent to Mr. Haddad and the normalization committee?
Yeah.
You in agreement with that letter?
Yeah. The association, we were in agreement with the letter.
Meaning, Mr. Edwards, that you had your issues were clear, that you, as I said, things were not happening in the way you think it should be happening.
Yeah.
That's safe to say?
It's safe to say.
I'm taking a break, right? When we come back, I want to go through some of the issues, and I wanted to deal with the issues from the stakeholders' point of view, because the stakeholders would have, as I said, clearly outlined their issues. Mr. Edwards said you would have heard his experience in terms of dealing with the issue from Mr. Wallace into the normalization committee, into Mr. Haddad, and what he's currently doing or not doing, as the case may be. When we come back, Mr. Edwards will go into the issues and deal with it one by one. This is the Ascension Football Show.
The situation we have here is that these characters, and I refer to them as pests, right? What they are doing is destroying our country, but not on my watch. No street, no turf, no block shall belong to these cockroaches, right? It's no longer business as usual. Happy hour is over. If they don't fear God, at least they will fear Terminix.
Have you considered how your methods could impact on pests across the country?
I find we look after the rights of pests as opposed to the rights of the 1.3 million law-abiding citizens in Trinidad and Tobago. I wonder if Roach Ladden's son come here for a carnival, if you'll interview him, eh?
But how could you defend one shot, one kill?
What, you want me to throw a pillow at him?
I didn't say that.
No, well, if a roach jumps in front of you now, what will you do?
Run.
Oh, Jesus, Lord Father.
Pests bothering you? Call Terminix at 672-5007 or 672-0042 or visit our website at terminix.co.tt for a free quote and consultation. Join our fight against pests.
Get in the game with Ascension. Quality for champions.
Ascension! Premium quality and style make you stand out all the time. Ascension is quality for champions. Ascension fit is always right. Take your game to higher heights. Ascension got the quality for champions. So everybody say, hey, oh. We wearing Ascension when we play. To run out on the field in style. What's the brand that we want? Ascension. We wearing what we wearing is Ascension. Quality for a champion. Ascension. We wearing what we wearing is Ascension. Quality for a champion. Ascension. We wearing what we wearing is Ascension.
Get in the game with Ascension. Quality for champions. Cafe is located at Magnificent Mall, number 271 Southern Main Road, McBean, Couva. Amante Del Cafe. Happiness begins with brew. Lasso Frame Maritime Limited, the best in marina services. At our facilities, security checks ensures that all vehicles are secured. Our newly renovated bathrooms are always kept in a clean working order. Need repairs and maintenance? We have you covered. Our qualified workmen will get the job done. Boat storages. From our marina, you can easily push off for a family sailing trip. Or out fishing with the boys. Or a fun DDI experience with friends. Boat repairs, secured parking, extensive camera system, boat charters, boat rentals, down the island parties. Contact us at 1-868-634-1653. Lasso Frame Maritime Limited, the best in marina services. Life's better on a boat.
The normalization committee is on the front burner. Mr. Robert Haddad is on the front burner. And I have Karen Edwards here with me dealing with some of the issues that the stakeholders would have addressed over the last few weeks. As we, in a state in football where we probably in a good place, where we don't have to worry about what happening on the field and we can deal with what's happening off the field so that hopefully when we're ready to get back on the field, fingers crossed, toes crossed, and everything else crossed, we'll be in a good place. Ms. Edwards is here, and Ms. Edwards, as I said before the break, let's go through it one by one. First of all, that letter, let's just reflect on the letter before the response, because the response by Mr. Haddad, I think, brought another level of anxiety among the stakeholders. But let's deal with the letter. The letter was very, very clearly identified, issues clearly identified, point by point by point. You were happy with that letter and the issues that were pinpointed in that letter?
Yeah, I was happy with the letter and the way the letter was structured and the amount of detail issues and giving him the enough information with the questions as well. I think I was very comfortable with the letter.
You think the letter was also, you were in agreement the letter was important to be penned at that time based on what was happening or not happening with the normalization committee? That was the timing of the letter?
Yeah, I think the letter was about a year into his tenure, to him 6 months, whichever one you want to take it. It wasn't a time where you needed to get some level of accountability,
clarity,
some clarity.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so yeah, the letter was came in at a good time. Gave him enough time to see what he was doing. He has enough time, having a year still left on his tenure, giving him enough time to correct course. So I think the letter should have been looked upon as something as the membership assistant in terms of what they see might have been lacking and what they think that should be done within the next year.
So let me deal with Mr. Haddad's response in the two phases that he dealt with it, because there was an immediate response.
Yeah.
Assuring the membership, don't panic. I'm paraphrasing here, my words, right? Don't panic, don't worry. I'm hearing you. I will address it. That was an immediate response. I think within a matter of hours, if I'm not mistaken, of receiving the letter. Did you hold some hope there?
Yeah. When he sent out the response this Saturday, I was like, yeah, this week here he would man up, as we say, local terms, and maybe call the membership and have a discussion with them. I know that was being bantered about, that a meeting would have been had, and some explanation would have been given, some in terms of what is happening in football, because normalization or not, executive or not, William Wallace, John Williams, or Tim Key, the football fraternity has to continue be run. The associations, the tournaments continue to happen. So I think at that point would have been a great time. I was really excited when I saw the response that yes, Mr. Haddad, we would get somewhere, we would have some sort of dialogue on these matters.
So you said something there. That you were hoping after that initial response, that initial immediate response, that Mr. Haddad would have said, okay, let me meet with the stakeholders, arrange a meeting, and have some discourse with them. Is that what you were hoping, that he would actually call a meeting? Whether it's, I mean, you know how we meet in these days in Zoom. You wanted that. That's what you think the majority of the membership wanted. Some discourse with.
We thought that would have, because it was suggested in some forums that was what that would have happened. And I think that would have been the easiest way to have that address those matters, because
most effective way as well. Easiest, most effective.
I think it would have been the easiest way than trying to put it back in writing, because it's a lot, and you could have had a discussion with members, because we are doing it. I think he met with a lot of the associations via Zoom. We did a meeting with the Minister of Sports with Mr. Haddad and all the stakeholders in 2020 with the whole court matter and whatnot. So we did that, and that was done in less than a week. So I was expecting some level of importance and urgency on these matters, knowing that the stakeholders took the time to pen a letter such as this here, that you would deal with it with that level of urgency.
All right. His response then came, as you said, via another letter, and that letter, based on what the rumblings I'm hearing throughout the fraternity, the membership not happy with that response.
Yeah, the membership is not happy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say the membership is happy. The membership is not happy with the response.
He attempted to deal with some, if not all the issues.
He made statements in the response. I don't think he really dealt with any matter with the level of importance with the matters. At the end of the day, you have a legal and a ethical responsibility to the membership. Remember that, to the stakeholders. This, no matter if FIFA appointed you, you have that. All decisions made by Mr. Haddad, it's legal and binding. So the TTFE and the membership. So you have to bear that in mind when the membership asks a question about it's about 15 points or 16 points. You have that ethical responsibility to respond in a proper manner. And I think he missed the mark with his response with the letter.
All right, so let's try to deal with some of the major issues. Probably let me make it very clear, people, that I don't think Mr. Edwards is speaking on behalf of the membership. Or are you?
No, I'm not.
No.
I'm not.
You're not speaking on behalf of all the stakeholders here necessarily.
No, I'm not speaking. I'm not speaking on behalf of the stakeholders. But I think some of the concerns would be
shared. Yeah. Just want to make that clear, because Mr. Edwards is a stakeholder in trying to make us football at this time, and one that expressed concern with how the normalization committee would have been handling the business of football, and especially the communication or lack thereof where Mr. Haddad and the football membership is concerned. So, biggest issue, as I would have reiterated before, has to be the debt repayment, and how Trinidad and Tobago's football will move forward without that noose hanging around its neck of close to $100 million in debt. Every time it comes out of my mouth, I'm amazed. There was no real plan coming from Mr. Haddad at this stage of the game with regard to this debt repayment. Yes?
No real plan. I believe the Minister of Sport in an interview recently would have said that they know that the normalization committee, even sport companies, is working on something, but she has not seen anything. And she hopes that whenever it comes, it suffice. The real issue for me is that in his letter addressing the debt repayment plan, we moved from a debt we were hearing about $60 million. We moved to $70 million. I think some months ago I heard somebody mention $70 million. And then to see Ernest and Young, well, here of Ernest and Young audited report saying it's 98 million thereabout, was some concern for me. And then hearing that the report came out in April, and as a member, we are asking about a plan. We're asking about what is happening with the debt repayment plan, and getting that report without any details to say this is where the debt is. Remember, the role of the normalization committee is next year, March the 26th, I believe, to have set up the framework to have an election. We're talking about somebody from within the football fraternity taking over the reins of the TTFA with whatever plan, with whatever debt, not knowing anything. So you're going to be walking in blind if the information is not shared with the membership.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to take that into context, and Mr. Haddad needs to take that into context and say, all right, we have the association heads. These persons must be informed of what is happening when it comes to debt. Maybe until he has the entire plan or whatever plan he has, because I heard that Ernest and Young might be working alongside him to help with the plan or whatever. Maybe not that, but to say that the debt has moved from 60 million to 98 million, we need the membership are owed that because of your responsibility to the membership. Remember your answer to the membership. You report to FIFA, but you answer to him. You are in charge of the TTFA. And the membership are owed that level of communication and the information to know the debt has moved from, because is it a secret to say where the debt is? If we have audited, so the numbers are real, and we know nothing about the debt, when would we know? When after the election? Come on, we need to be real. We need to be real with how things are going.
You indicated a jump from 60 to 70 to 98. Is it that the increasing debt is now on what is currently being put on the previous debt based on the running of football as we speak now?
We don't know, and this is the problem. We don't know if the Ernest and Young report cost $5 million, $10 million, $2,
Right.
if it was done free,
Right.
or is that part of the debt? Did they add that report into the debt? Is it that the new coaches coming on board, the new managers? We talking about, we have 3 national team managers. In a time where we're talking debt, where our managers were added recently. We don't know. We know that there are positions being filled. At what cost? For what duration? The membership deserve these things when you're talking $98 million, where the purpose of FIFA is to create a debt repayment plan. Not to say that he has to clear the debt. So the football fraternity over a period of time would have to work out that plan. We need to know what we're getting ourselves into.
I like to ask a foolish question ever so often. This may seem a foolish question because Mr. Haddad and the Normalization Committee is there, Mr. Edwards, on a temporary basis to reset, sort things out, put plans and things in place for when an election is held next March, as you're saying, based on all things being equal. Is it that, especially where we're talking this debt repayment plan and the way forward in terms of financially for trying to be good football, whatever Mr. Haddad is to put in place debt repayment, is it that now is handed over to the next president of the TTFA and say, listen, this is what you're running with based on what Mr. Haddad and FIFA would have organized in this little tricky period? Is that what will happen?
That's expected. And he's not there on a temporary basis. He's there on a permanent basis for 2 years. He's there for 2 years. He has a tenure for 2 years. So this temporary thing.
You don't like that? You don't like that
no,
word?
he's being paid.
Right.
Yes, we know he said that he's donating his salary,
Right.
but he's being paid. Yeah, he's there full time. He's there operating as the head of our TTFA, of the TTFA.
For 2 years.
For 2 years.
Yes. Okay, got it.
So let's don't mix it up to feel like if it's a part-time
Right.
something or
So my concerning question here, as I said, is whatever is done, we know how it works in the politics and the football politics. Whatever is done in this period, because this is now being overseen by FIFA.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is done in this period with regards to plans and policies going forward, especially where this debt repayment plan is concerned, is it that the next president must take what Mr. Haddad has done and say implement, or the next president say, listen, this makes sense, but I don't think that makes sense, and I am going to do this instead of doing that.
I think the football fraternity would not allow a president, whoever it may be, to come and throw away what Mr. Haddad does now.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't happen. But this is the concern we're having. We have to live with whatever decision is made. The Minister of Sports mentioned, she said, this football fraternity need to be consulted on matters when it comes to debt repayment plan. Mm-hmm. We had a president, Joel, that focused heavily on the home of football. And the football on the field game suffered. That's a financial revenue generating project he focused on, which could help him repaying debt. But football suffered. We left from being 50 something in the world at when he came in, early 50s, low 50s, and we 105 when he left in the world. We can't accept that our women football programs fell flat. No youth development, no program being developed. So Mr. Haddad has to understand, you're not doing a debt repayment plan for a company. You're doing a debt repayment plan for a football fraternity. You're doing a debt repayment plan for the federation for football. There's the livelihood of men that still in a peanut pack, as we say. They ain't born yet. So he needs to understand it has a level of balance when it comes to what happens. And if the football fraternity, if the stakeholders in football that have to live with it when Mr. Haddad is gone because he's there for 2 years, what happens? If there's no program and we're just talking about take all the money from FIFA and put it into paying persons and we have no programs.
Back to square one.
Well, we worse than square one.
Yeah.
So he has to take that into consideration in terms of having dialogue with the membership. And through the course of this interview, I'll explain to you why dialogue with the membership is so important.
Mm-hmm. So Mr. the audited statements that would have been presented based on the letter, I think I saw, if I'm not mistaken, 2019. Was it up to 2019 that Mr. Haddad would have presented in terms of audited statements?
Well, we asked for the audited statements. He made mention of the audited statements being for 2019, up to 2019. But no AGM was had to approve those audited financial statements from the membership. And those are the gray areas we're having. We have to have an AGM. The membership is still there. FIFA didn't normalize the fraternity or the membership. Mm-hmm. So he has to call an AGM. We have to approve the audited statements has to be shown and provided to the membership. Mm-hmm. We now have to approve it. We're now going into a new year for AGM. We had no AGM in 2020. And we can't blame it on the pandemic because FIFA had their Congress via Zoom on their platform, and we could have done so. We had a EGM to remove William Wallace and Company, mm-hmm. And to reinstate the normalization committee, which FIFA was comfortable with, and reinstated Mr. Haddad as the chair of the normalization and brought back the normalization committee into not having Trinidad and Tobago banned. So not having an AGM to approve those audited financials is a real issue. And that is where the membership needs to have the dialogue with Mr. Haddad. We need to make sure those things are clear. We don't want to use the notion of this is a gray area and this black and white. So when it comes to to the authority I have, it's black and white. You can't do this. I could do this. But when it comes to the situation of where the membership the reports have to come to your membership, it's always a gray area. We need to clear up those lines. And one is having the AGM, one is having the financials presented and approved, and then appointing the auditor for the following year, or appointing the auditor for the period. So we are not certain, because 2019 was given. We appointed an auditor from 2019 to 2023 in the AGM with Mr. John Williams. So you appoint the auditor for a period. We're not sure if the same auditor was used, and it might have been, because the documents would be there of who was the auditor before and whatnot. And then if in 2020, if the audit was done and if the same auditor was used, we heard that within the whole statement that Ernst & Young, we heard about the audit in that same line. That's a problem, because the role that Ernst & Young came into play is a management role in terms of finding out the debt and verifying the debt. And they can't operate now as the auditors for the company, because they would have done managerial work within the company, and they need to have that clear line, that separation of powers when it comes to audit. So those things, and those are simple things that you can have in an AGM, you can have in a meeting, and have that discussion and that dialogue, get an answer, and move forward.
So the AGM actually is one of the major points as well.
Yeah.
It kind of shows the importance, just by what you outlined, the importance of having an AGM. He decided against having an AGM. Is it or is it a timing? Why no AGM over the last year?
No. Well, that was one of the points. It wasn't addressed in the letter. So I can only speculate in terms of why and why not. And the point is, we need to deal with things with factual.
Yeah.
No AGM was held in 2020. It should have been held. No date has been called for one in 2020. In 2021. We need to have an AGM.
Yeah.
And
because we're going out to 2 years of.
Oh, come on.
And I think what is a little concerning there is that this period of spend, we don't know. So we know we had a $60-70 million debt, but we don't know. We know that football coaches are being paid. We don't know what else is being, but we don't know the spend.
We don't know the spend. And it's nice. Yes, FIFA would have appointed, and we have to take this into context. This is someone with no real football background, or no football background, safe to say. And he made mention of that in the past as well. This is a football federation. We need to be able to balance, and I said it earlier, we need to balance it too. So if the spend is in the wrong place where it's not really helping, the Minister of Sports alluded to that in our press conference recently, in not a press conference, but in an interview recently. She said that the monies that would be given to football would be for development and athletes.
Yeah, not for debt repayment.
Not for debt repayment.
Yeah.
And she was clear with that. She had made that clear. And she mentioned in a meeting with the stakeholders that the time of wastage must stop. And she's going to hold administrators accountable. We have to take that serious. We need to know what's going on to make sure that we are in line with the government, we're in line with FIFA, we're in line with our responsibility as administrators.
Yeah. I've always been concerned at the question that you raised, and I'm going to raise it to go into the standing committees that need to be in place and probably have not really been seriously looked at. Who's advising, in your mind, Mr. Haddad? Because you said it, and we all know it. Mr. Haddad is a very successful businessman in this country, but the reality is that he's not a football man. Does he have somebody at his right hand just whispering in his ears, hey, football this, football that, football this, football that?
I haven't seen anybody in all the meetings. I
No.
haven't seen anybody on his right hand whispering in his ears.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, he would have to bounce ideas off of someone.
Somebody.
So,
you don't know who that is?
we're not that close.
No?
We're
Yeah,
not
make
that-
a call and drop him a WhatsApp and...
For me personally, I honestly, I really don't care
Right.
who it is.
Yeah.
Once he's doing the right thing, it's fine for me. You know,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So, but he needs to, and as you made mention of that, he needs to have somebody advise him on football matters. And it's not a knock on him,
No, it's not.
but
not.
this is reality. This is the job you face. Same way you brought in Ernest and Young to fact check the debt and whatnot. You need to fact check football because it is a football federation.
Yeah.
So it's important.
That takes us into the standing committees, because I know that has been another serious issue. We running football without proper committees in place at this stage. Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is the case.
I think it was a misstep by Mr. Haddad and maybe a little inexperience in terms of football to downplay the importance of the standing committees in the meeting, in the letter. He made mention of the standing committees not having any decision-making power. We know that. That is not the reason.
They advise.
They advise. They give you the advice. They give you. And I'm saying it openly. Although he sent that letter, he should take this advice. This is May 2021, right? And Mr. Haddad should stop all what he's doing. Do whatever review he said that he's doing in the letter about the standing committees, and appoint 2 standing committees now. Before the end of June, these 2 standing committees must be in place. That's the technical committee and the audit and compliance committee. Those are the 2 most important committees when it comes to the TTFE and the running of TTFE. And it shows to the level of corporate responsibility. Not having these committees operating, it's a serious issue. All over the world, big companies, any football federation, FIFA has the finance committee and the audit committees, and the committees running. We need to take the lead. And we need to set the trend of what we are accepting in football, and the stakeholders are basically telling him that. And the advice is put those committees in place, because we're seeing some missteps without a technical committee.
Yeah.
We're seeing some missteps.
I would just think that Mr. Haddad, if anything that he would have made sure and put on the front burner, is appointing these committees, because, as I said, in any major corporate structure, you need advice committees, and you're coming in to run an organization such as the TTFA. You're not necessarily, well edified when it comes to football. Appoint footballing committees that you will have to call on and say, hey, what happened here? What happened there? What happened there? That just seems that hasn't been the case.
And it's important because of the responsibility which was placed on his shoulders with the debt repayment plan. We're talking $98 million now, knowing that.
Yeah.
You don't have the time to deal with every coach appointment, or it has to be report. You need to be able. Yes, you have the responsibility to sign off, but you have to have competent persons in position to do that work, to be able to say, all right, and you oversee it. You can't micromanage every part of the TTFA. It was done before, and we saw where that got us.
Yeah, we have $1 million debt now, a multi-million-dollar debt now.
$100 million.
Yeah, multi-million-dollar debt now.
That's
You're giving Mr. Haddad until the end of June, you're saying, to appoint these committees.
Yeah, if when he sees this, and he should take that advice. I believe he should take that advice. And as I said, we have a relationship. I know he will know that it's coming from the best place, and he should take that advice and put together a technical committee as soon as possible.
Mr. Edwards, talk to me about the unified league. That has always been something that is now being touted in terms of coming together of all the leagues, one big happy football family, the league, Super League, Pro League, everybody coming together. That is something that is on the table as well with this normalization committee.
Well, it's something that was mentioned. It's something being pursued as well by the normalization committee. I've been around some discussions with it being my position as the managing director of Lockita Terminix Rangers, which is a professional club. I've been in meetings where we had discussions about the Unified League. On my end as the president of the zone though, little to no information on it.
Read the zone.
Read the zones,
Right.
which is the biggest stakeholder in football. The Pro League like to say that they are the largest contributor to football, maybe financially, and we have arguments. We hear because it's a balance between Pro League and zones. I would hear persons from the zone saying, well, the government gives Pro League the money to if they give it to the zone, then we'll be the biggest financial contributors to football. The zones though, without a question, are the largest stakeholders when it comes to football in Trinidad and Tobago. Over 90-something clubs representing the zones. All clubs coming from that are within the Super League came from a zone. Most of the professional clubs came from zones. So while everybody likes to say, well, why we spending more and that is why we should be important or we should be ahead of the queue. The zones being left out of this unified league discussions at this point, because we had a meeting with Mr. Haddad, some of the zonal presidents had a meeting with Mr. Haddad, and he mentioned when they work out the framework of the unified league, the zones would be invited to come and have some discussion.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's after the horse bolt out the stable.
Zones are responsible for grassroots development.
Yeah.
Everybody like to talk grassroots. Zones are responsible for grassroots
So
development.
at this stage, the zone's not part of a unified
Not
league.
a part of a unified league, which is
So, the unified league, the whole concept of a unified league. I know there's been banter about it. Your position on, is it viable? Does it make sense? Are you in support?
I'm in support of anything when it comes to football and unifying persons playing the game. But we need to be real in terms of what we're trying to attain here with our unified league and in the time frame. We're talking about Mr. Haddad hoping to have this done within his tenure. This is next year March. We have some serious concerns in terms of having Pro League, Super League, zonal football, all comprising under one umbrella, one league. How would that operate with professional clubs? Would they have the finance to operate yearly to do this unified league? It's an issue. Pro League has had issues because of my involvement in professional football. Issues in terms of subvention, not knowing if Pro League will have this subvention for the upcoming season. Would that be sorted out? Is it that TTFA is now going to help with that subvention, with government subvention to professional football? If so, then how would that affect the debt and the debt repayment? So you have that balance and act when it comes to that. Then you have the major issue. You have professional football with persons being paid, and then you have Super League where persons, if you pay, as Mr. LeCroy does love to say, if you could pay, you pay. If you can't pay, you play. So what will happen if a semi-professional team wins the second division and is promoted? Automatically, to keep a professional status, I think 18 players need to be paid no less than $2,500.
Yeah.
How is that going to happen? So we need to take those things into consideration. We're talking about the zonal level. Would it have promotion, demotion, relegation? We need to take those things into consideration. And we had for some time, we remember UEFA came to Trinidad, what would have been 3 years ago, set up, they had a framework set up to do a unified league. But they had issues in terms of approving it. Because Super League clubs were saying that we want to play top flight, first division, and the professional clubs were saying, well, if they come up, they have to pay the players. So those are the issues. And then you have an issue of playing the club championship. So when you're not a professional league, you don't qualify for the FIFA Club Championship, the CONCACAF Club Championship. Right now, we are not in it because we are not compliant to CONCACAF. So But those are the real issues, because if I'm paying players, if I'm going to invest in football to that level, it must have that end game. I must be able to say I go and play club championship, have some recognition, sell players, and that is the business of football. So there's some
As we stand now,
there's some concerns about the unified league and that concept, but the idea is one that would be supported.
right, but as we stand now, there is no way forward with regards to this. It's just a bright idea. All the questions you just asked, I have no answers for, and I've heard no answers
Well,
for.
hopefully, if the zones are and when we do have a sit down with Mr. Haddad, I think that is one of the concerns. I know all zonal presidents are clamoring for it. Once we have a zonal involvement, I could be able to answer a little clearer in terms of if it's just an idea or if they are doing more, because they have had some meetings.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know what's happening with it.
All right. My final is you alluded to it a short while ago, and we haven't been much about it, but our compliance where CONCACAF is concerned, we are not compliant.
We are not compliant for some years now, since under David John Williams, and that is what I alluded to before.
Mm-hmm.
Having just a laser focus on finance, on debt repayment, on making money, on revenue, and not studying football could be to the detriment of the sport. So, yes, we were focusing on the home of football and getting it done. Great idea. We neglected the matters of football, the business of football. And we have to remember, persons are here. The normalization committee is here to deal with the business of football from a stakeholder perspective. FIFA would have given the mandate, number one, to deal with the debt repayment plan, but they would have given a mandate the day-to-day runnings of the Football Federation within that same letter. And because they knew the importance of football to a Football Federation, it's a no-brainer. FIFA is there because of the MAs dealing the business of football. So, not having Trinidad and Tobago compliant to CONCACAF, it's ridiculous. And not reinstating Trinidad and Tobago and to make them compliant during the tenure of a normalization committee that was placed by FIFA and CONCACAF. That's ridiculous. It's unacceptable to come out of the tenure of Mr. Haddad without Trinidad being compliant, without Trinidad and Tobago being compliant to CONCACAF. And that's the simplest way I could put it.
I want to give you just a last minute or so just to address in a nutshell what you are hoping for from Mr. Haddad and the Normalization Committee going into this phase here of nothing happening, but at least trying to deal with the stakeholders. Just in a nutshell, what are you hoping for?
I'm hoping for Mr. Haddad to reach out to the membership and really address the issues that was sent in. I think the response by the Normalization Committee, not signed. No one took ownership to the letter being sent to the membership. This is a letter written by whoever on a TTFA letterhead sent to the membership. No one took ownership to say, I, Joel Villafana, sign on behalf of the TTFA or the Normalization Committee saying this is the response to your concerns. We need to have a serious response to the concerns because they are valid. And you need to be able to say, all right, I'm holding a meeting, because it don't have to be an AGM. It could be a general meeting. It could even be just a meeting of the heads, of the president heads, not even the delegates. And say, all right, we're having this meeting to discuss certain matters, and then you go and disseminate it amongst your membership. But we need to have that level of discussion. We need to. They are valid. They are persons with great amount of experience and expertise in different fields within the football fraternity. We need to. That's the first thing. And a lot of persons like to say, because there's $100 million debt, everybody in football responsible for that. No. That's like saying because you're as a country, your economy is not good, everybody in the country is responsible for the economy because we elected you. No, there's a democratic process to elect persons in authority. If that person puts themselves up and there's an election and they are there, they have a responsibility to do the right thing. And if they don't do it, as persons would see, for the last 3 elections, no one has served 2 terms. Mr. Timke served 1 term, David John Williams served 1 term, and Wallace, well, he didn't get to finish the term, but he was removed. And persons need to take a serious look at that and say, all right, I'm coming here to do what I set out to do. And Mr. Haddad has to take that. He's here for 2 years. There's a responsibility. Those things are outlined. He needs to take it serious and get the job done. And Trinidad and Tobago is looking on. The football fraternity is looking on. It's not just because the football fraternity would have approved of his appointment and would have gone to the lengths to ensure that he would be placed to run the football of Trinidad and Tobago means that anything he does would be accepted. No, because you're hearing it in some quarters. Well, that is what they ask for, so get them that. They fight to bring Mr. Haddad, and if that is the letter he sent and he don't want to respond, take that. No, that we can't accept that. Yes, we approve of him being placed there. We know that FIFA had the right to do what they did. We accept that, but he needs to do it properly. We need to hold him accountable for the wrongs, and we need to give him praise for when he does right. And I think that is what we need coming out of this whole couple of weeks of the letter being sent and the response and whatnot. So that is what I expect out of that.
Karen Edwards, thank you very much, my brother. I think all being said and done, we wait. We keep our eyes and ears on this story because I think this is the major development that we hope will take shape over the next couple of weeks here in Trinidad and Tobago. We need our football to get back on track, and right now we just need to see it on the track, at least heading in the right direction. And hopefully Mr. Haddad and his normalization committee will do exactly that.
Pest control is a pain, but you don't have to go it alone. If you're a business that needs someone who will fix your problems point blank, go with the brand that's tested. Go with Terminix. Born almost a century ago in Memphis, Tennessee, Terminix International's mission has been to spread its innovations across the world through its integrated pest and termite management system, reducing the infestation of pests and vermin. Our Trinidad franchise neutralizes the threat of tropical insects and ensures that companies, from food production to hospitality, protect their investment and get the maximum value from our relationship. And we've been doing it well for over 20 years. Termites and pests are relentless, but they're no match for Terminix. Contact us today for a free consultation and quote, and let's introduce you to convenience. Protect your premises today. Choose a service provider that persists. Talk to Terminix.
Pests bothering you? Call Terminix at 672-5007 or 672-0042 or visit our website at terminix.co.tt for a free quote and consultation. Join our fight against pests.
Get in the game with Ascension. Quality for champions.
Hey, Ascension! Ascension! Premium quality and style make you stand out all the time. Ascension is quality for champions. Ascension fit is always right. Take your game to higher heights. Ascension got the quality for champions. Now everybody say, hey, oh, we wearing Ascension when we play. To run out on the field in style. What's the brand that we want? Ascension, Ascension, Ascension. We wearing what we wearing is Ascension. Quality for a champion. Ascension. We wearing what we wearing is Ascension.
Get in the game with Ascension. Quality for champions. Lasso Frame Maritime Limited, the best in marina services. At our facilities, security checks ensures that all vehicles are secured. Our newly renovated bathrooms are always kept in a clean working order. Need repairs and maintenance? We have you covered. Our qualified workmen will get the job done. Boat cold storages. From our marina, you can easily push off for a family sailing trip. Or out fishing with the boys. Or a fun DDI experience with friends. Boat repairs, secured parking, extensive camera system, boat charters, boat rentals, down the island parties. Contact us at 1-868-634-1653. Lasso Frame Maritime Limited. The best in marina services. Life's better on a boat. Amante Del Cafe is located at Magnificent Mall, number 271 Southern Main Road, McBean, Couva. Amante Del Cafe. Happiness begins with brew.
I am Caleb Sturge and I am a defender and I represent Terminex La Hocketa Rangers. First time I kicked a ball was at the age of 4 years old when my uncle introduced me to the game of football. My uncle's name is William Chin and I am from the area of Diego Martin. Well, he trained me for a long period of time and he used to take me up to the savannah and I used to play against older boys. And well, the first team I played was with a side called Metro Stars. And I was approximately 10 years old when I played under 12. And from there on, my football career kicked off. Majority of the time, I was the smallest player on the field. Like, I used to run through people's legs most of the time, plenty of times. That's how small I was. And I always used to play against bigger people. When my uncle introduced me to the game of football, well, he was a good footballer in the community, one of the best at the time being. And that made me fall in love with football, just seeing him play and seeing the skills he had and the ability and the way how he approached the game. Well, I am from the area, from Diego Martin, and Karen Cummins was one of the best players as I growing up in my time and then. And well, internationally was Steven Gerrard and a couple other Liverpool players. Well, Liverpool is my team. Favorite players I looked up to internationally and locally, like Latipi, Dwight York, Chris Burchard, Steven Gerrard, Risa, and majority of the Liverpool players. First I was introduced to defense force as a youngster at under 16 level, and I played there for 2 years. And then I entered to Jablute, where I spent another 2 years. At senior level, I was at St. Anne's Rangers at first. Then I moved on to Jablute. Then I spent approximately 2 years. Then I moved on to police. Then W Connection. And then I was introduced to Terminex La Hokata Rangers. I am a defensive player, and my attributes is to defend as well as my attack would be. I am a defensive player, and I am a very rugged, and I always give 150% every time I play. I do not take any personals. Well, the manager is that made the biggest impact in my career is Mr. Ferguson. He's a man who likes to win, always likes to win. Everything is winning about him. Well, the impact he had on me is showing me certain things in the game that not everything is attacking, but also defensive. He's a very good leader, and I also like that much about him, because I, to myself, I am one of those two. He have a big impact on his team, and he always demands that we win, that we always play at our best, that we give more than we got. Mr. Ferguson always tries to help his players at his best ability, even to help them in their personal life, not just on the field, but at home. Help us to be better people in life. He tries to make us think positive at all times, to be humble. That is his major attribute about him, to be humble. Always stay humble and positive. And he helps me to be an all-round player, not just defensively, but attackingly. He always makes us feel comfortable around him, and also makes us stay healthy and stay fit at all times. When we played against W Connection in the FCB Cup, the first round, when we won 2-0, helped keep a clean sheet, and we won the game. It was one of the biggest games I had. Well, some of my ambitions is to be making the national team and playing in big games, and one day representing my country at the highest level. It's been a pleasure playing under Mr. Ferguson. He had introduced me to the best playing style of football, and I know he wants to take it to another level in the Caribbean and take Trinidad football to another level. A no-nonsense defender, hard tackler, 150% all the time, every game. I am Caleb Sturge, and I represent Terminex La Hokata Rangers.
That's going to do it for another show here on the Ascension Football Show. Guys, we are keeping our eyes and ears on what is happening with the Normalization Committee. We are very, very committed to ensure that there's a sense of transparency in the football, and football, as I said, gets back on the right track. We'll see you back here every weekend on the Ascension Football.